Jailed for child sex offences, has been killed in an attack in prison. The former Lost Prophets singer, who was convicted in 2013, was attacked in Wakefield prison.
Watkins was reportedly slashed in the neck by a fellow lag at the prison on the 11th of October. Police and paramedics had raced to Wakefield prison in West Yorkshire, which had been dubbed Monster Mansion, but he could not be saved. The disgraced singer, who was aged 48, died from blood loss after having his jugular slashed. Watkins is understood to have been ambushed and stabbed as inmates were allowed out of their cells.
Imagine the former rock star who thought his celebrity and his 35-year sentence would protect him inside HMP Wakefield, Monster Mansion. He was ambushed in the morning, and the source said the attacker went for the jugular.
If you don't know who he is, he was in a band called the Lost Prophets in the early 2000s. In 2004, Ian started to essay and groom his underage fans. In 2007, he started to bring them home. There was a 16-year-old girl, and he found out that she had no experience, and that excited him so much that he decided that night that he was going to take that from her. When he was done, he urinated on her and told her to drink it. I mean, it's hard to imagine that it could get any worse, but it does. Following this, he would brag to people about doing things to 12 and 14-year-old girls, but he would disguise it as a joke so that people wouldn't take it seriously. When he did have adult partners, he would get off on telling them things he wanted to do or did do to children, and again, it's a joke. He ends up starting to date a woman named Joanne, and he tells Joanne about what he was doing to underage children, and so she went to the police station and reported him that night. The police thought that she was a crazy ex or a psycho fan, and they closed the case immediately, and Ian knew that she had filed that report, and that just confirmed to him that he could do whatever he wanted. Because the police closed the case and because Ian was gaslighting her, she thought, maybe I am just being overdramatic about this. So 2 weeks later, he reels her back in, and this time almost immediately, he shows her a video of a baby being essayed. He then showed her other photos of babies in the same way, and she knew that she had to take that evidence from his devices and take it to police. So she does that, and the police refuse to even look at it. So at this point, she doesn't know what to do. She writes Ian's mother a letter explaining everything she's seen, everything that's been said, and his mother not only ignores Joanne, but reported her to police for stalking and harassment. They actually ended up bringing Joanne in for questioning and threatened to charge her if she did not stop. Joanne was absolutely devastated, knowing that children and babies were being harmed and she could not let it go. And so she decided to pretend to be back with him in order to collect as much as she possibly could so that she could not be ignored. So in 2011, she reaches back out to Ian, pretending to be interested, and almost immediately he sends her a video of a baby with himself. And instead of responding in the absolute disgust that she felt for Ian, she played along. So that led Ian to trust her, and he continued to send her things, and so she decides to email the chief of police, who also ignores her. And then it gets worse. She finds out that Ian is doing things to a baby, a 10-month-old baby, with the mother's help. She figures out who that mother is. She contacts the father of that child. The father never responds. In 2012, Joanne and Ian have a Skype call where Ian admits everything. She records that call, tries to take it to the police, and again, they don't care. It took another 6 months after that before police took it seriously and went and got all of Ian's electronics.
How did they know who he was? Why did they choose that moment? And what does it take to survive when you are the lowest rung on the prison food chain? This is the truth about what really happens to chomos in prison, and it's far worse than you can imagine.
You're out there touching on kids, or you're a child molester, or you got busted for having sex with underage teenagers, whatever the case may be. You go to prison, somebody's going to find out about what you're locked up for, whether it's a guard who don't like you, who tells somebody else what you're in there for, or somebody has a person on the street, go online and check your paperwork. But one way or the other, they're going to find out you're a child molester, and you're going to get your wig split. So if you find out that the guy's a child molester, you might as well just slap him upside the head and split his wig yourself so you don't get your wig split. So that's what happens to child molesters. They get their head busted.
To understand the fate of these men, you first have to understand the prison hierarchy. Every jail has a bottom tier, and the lexicon of hatred for this group, chomos, chesters, nonces, short eyes, tells you everything you need to know about their social status. Right now, there are over 127,000 inmates in U.S. state prisons alone serving time for crimes against children. That's a massive, vulnerable population. And every single one of them faces a fundamental choice the moment they step onto the block: general population or protective custody. We're going to break down both options. We'll look at protective custody, the gilded cage that promises safety but delivers psychological torture, where men like John Jogan were still hunted down and killed. And then we'll look at the main line, where survival means you must deal with the paper trail, the impossibility of hiding your charges, and the constant threat of the Chomo tax system. It all leads to the moment the tax fails, the moment you are greenlit. And that's the story of Ian Watkins and the brutal legacy of Robert Mousley come in. This is the reality of prison's internal justice. But first, let's talk about the deadly fate of Ian Watkins in Monster Mansion. The morning unlock at Wakefield Prison is supposed to be routine. Doors clang open, men shuffle out. But on this morning, the routine ended with a single, precise strike. Ian Watkins, the former rock star serving 35 years for crimes that horrified a nation, was ambushed. The attack wasn't random, it was surgical. The target, the jugular. A source close to the incident called it exactly that, a pre-planned execution. This is HMP Wakefield, nicknamed Monster Mansion for a reason. It's a place that houses the most notorious predators, and it has a way of claiming its own. In an instant, the mundane prison morning transformed into a scene of brutal, final violence. This wasn't an anomaly. It was the system working exactly as designed. You see, inside there's a hierarchy everyone understands. At the very bottom, beneath the gang leaders and the violent offenders, are the social pariahs. The lexicon of hatred is vast. Chomos, chesters, nonces, short eyes. These aren't just insults, they're labels that mark a man for life. In the United States alone, over 127,000 inmates are serving time in state prisons for sex offenses involving children. That's a massive, vulnerable population, and every single one of them faces a fundamental life-or-death choice. Do they try to blend into the general population, risking immediate violence? Or do they admit their status and request protective custody, trading one kind of hell for another? This unwritten rule isn't about rehabilitation, it's about survival. So here's the thing. If you choose protective custody, you think you're safe. You're segregated, locked away from the mainline population. But the safety is an illusion. Take John Jogan, the former priest.
After 9 hours of deliberations, the jury convicts the former priest of fondling a 10-year-old.
It's the first conviction against the man who's accused of preying on more than 100 children.
What say you, Mr. Foreperson? Is the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Guilty. Offense is charged indecent assault and battery on a child under 14 years of age.
66-year-old defrocked priest John Gagan struggled to hold back his emotions after a jury convicted him of molesting a 10-year-old boy at the Waltham Boys and Girls Club swimming pool in 1991. But whatever the jurors saw, they weren't alone. More than 130 alleged victims have come forward to accuse Gagan of molesting or raping them as children during his years as a priest in the Boston Archdiocese.
He was in PC, supposedly the most secure part of the prison. A fellow inmate named Joseph Druce still found him, stomped his face in, and strangled him to death. Druce, a man with his own history of abuse, said he was driven to murder after hearing Jogan talk about his crimes. That's the reality of PC. Your daily life becomes a 23-hour lockdown. You shower alone, in chains. Your yard time is in a bullpen, a concrete cage where you might never feel the actual sun on your skin. It's sensory deprivation. It's psychological torture disguised as protection. The cage might be gilded, but it's still a cage that slowly eats away at your mind. Now you might think you can hide. You can't. Within days of arriving, someone will come to your cell and demand to see your papers, your sentencing documents. They're looking for specific codes, for the letters CHOMO. If they find them, your fate is sealed. Refusing to show your papers is just as damning. It's an automatic confession. And in the digital age, it's almost impossible to conceal your past. Inmates have ways of accessing public court records. Even guards, whether out of disdain or a desire for drama, have been known to leak this information. There is no paper trail you can escape. Your crime follows you into that cell, and the entire prison population becomes judge, jury, and far too often, executioner. This intelligence network is relentless and efficient. And now, let's talk about the Chomo tax.
You pay. This is the Chomo tax.
It's a system of extortion, a temporary buyout from violence. Gangs often enforce it. You pay for safe passage, for the privilege of not being beaten on sight.
How much money do you get a month?
I don't really tally it up.
How much do you think you get a month?
At least over $1,000.
And where does it go? Oh, this is crazy.
Prison extortion. Let me break it down for you. This guy right here apparently is a pedophile. So when you ask questions about why aren't pedophiles getting hurt all the time and they're walking the compound, just like he's a piece of shit, the guy filming this is a scumbag too, because they do extort them. But what they do is they don't go hard press them and threaten them. They laugh and kick it with them and hang out. They go up to him and say, hey buddy, I know your charges are bad, but I'm okay with it. You got $1,000 a month? Give all that money to me. You're gonna walk with me, you're gonna sit with me, you're gonna eat with me. You're gonna be my little boo thing. I'm gonna make sure nobody harms you. So this guy apparently has money and says, hey, I'll take it. Now he's walking around with a war daddy all over the compound knowing that nobody's gonna touch him because he's being protected. So they get extorted in there, but it's not the aggressive way that you would like to think. They're not running up in the cells, beating him up and taking his shit. They're finessing him. War daddy time. I'm going to protect you. Pay me my money. So prison extortion is real, but unfortunately in this case, it's not the way you want it to happen.
But it's a fragile bargain. The protection only lasts as long as your payments do. There are stories of predators working prison jobs, laundry, kitchen duty, just to fund this protection. They live in constant fear of the moment they can't pay, the moment the money runs out, or the gang's shot caller decides your time is up. It's a desperate economy of fear, where your life has a price tag that can be revoked at any moment. You're not living, you're renting your safety, day by day. But that's not even the beginning. When the tax fails, you get greenlit. KOS, kill on sight. Consider John Derek Chamberlain. Inmates believed he was a chomo. It was a lie. He was in for a misdemeanor. But a shot caller gave the order based on that rumor. 7 men unleashed a savage assault. They stomped him, violated him with a pencil and a tube of toothpaste. Guards watched TV nearby, indifferent. The system simply looked the other way.
A chomo in the California Department of Corrections suffered one of the most brutal deaths that I've ever come across in the prison system. An officer offered inmates 10 commissary items apiece. Also, they could watch the World Series for whoever participates in the brutal beating and murder of this chomo. Now, the papers and everything try to say it was mistaken identity. He's not a chomo. He's only in there for child abuse material, better known as child porn, which I don't like saying. And they only gave him a misdemeanor for that. Let me tell you how it works in the prison system. It doesn't matter what you're in there for. Child, rape, anything along those lines, it's all the same. When it comes to a child, it's much more vicious. So before I go into the reading of the incident report and even this dude's obituary, the computer programmer who was just mistaken identity, I'm not a chomo. I just watch it. Fuck you. You support it. You have anything to do with it. You're part of the problem and we're part of the solution. So apparently, allegedly, the officers made it known what he's about. And he tried to say, no, I'm not on that, man. I just, watch it and make money from it. They all say it's a hustle, right? And he offered some honey buns, World Series, whatever it may be, where they beat him viciously for over 90 minutes. They broke 24 ribs, all of his ribs. Every single one of his organs were destroyed. And to add insult to injury, they humiliated this chomo by putting a pencil up his ass, a spoon up his ass, a toothbrush with toothpaste up his ass. They pissed on him, spit on him. I mean, it's ruthless. Only thing I want to know is, did they get their 10 commissary items or not?
It shows that once you're greenlit, the system, both the inmate code and the institutional indifference, has essentially signed your death warrant. The hunting season is officially open. And if that sounds like injustice, the next story shows that some predators don't just get hunted, they become the prey of other predators. And nobody embodies that dark legacy like Robert Maudsley, Britain's real-life Hannibal Lecter.
An incident happened in 1978 where he committed a murder in London. He was placed into the hospital And on one incident in Broadmoor Hospital, him and another guy called Cheeseman held another patient hostage for 9 hours in one of the rooms that were in there. For these 9 hours, they tortured this other patient. Who, not just tortured him, I mean, they tied his hands up with flex that was available in the room. They physically tortured him. They kicked his head like a football. And the outcome was that Robert Maudsley had a plastic spoon which he formed into a sharp object and stabbed it into the side of the ear, killing the guy.
Maudsley was a guy who's, I think he's killed twice while he's been inside, and a very strange man, very dangerous man. You know, you would not want to be alone with that man. I'll tell you, he would kill you for nothing. But there were him in there, and there were...
Isn't he in a glass box, like the Hannibal Lecter cage?
No, he's not a glass box, but he's in what they call a prison within a prison.
Did you go in there and
yeah,
speak to
on
him?
F-wing, yeah.
What was it like?
He never spoke.
Never spoke.
When he came out of his cell, because I was like a new officer there at Wakefield, I probably stood out like a sore thumb. And he just stared at me, just stared me in the eyes, and just walked past me. Wouldn't speak, but he was a scary chap, him.
What kind of vibe did you get from his eyes?
I got the look of, I'd like to be alone with you. Oh. Do you know what I mean? I got that look.
He spent most of his life in a specially made, transparent Perspex cage because he's considered too dangerous for normal prison. His story starts with his own horrific childhood abuse, which fueled a mission to hunt those who hurt children. In prison, the victim becomes the executioner. While locked in Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital, he tortured a fellow patient for 9 hours, a man who had also preyed on kids. The story goes that he intermittently held the victim's bloodied head to the window to show staff what he was doing. When they finally got in, an officer said the man's head was cracked open like a boiled egg, a spoon pushed through his ear deep into his brain. Transferred to Wakefield Prison, the same monster mansion where Watkins would die decades later, Maudsley continued his work. He strangled his French teacher, a convicted predator, hid the body under his bed, then calmly went hunting for more. He's a man with a genius-level IQ who loves classical music, yet he once wrote, "When I kill, I think I have my parents in mind." His existence is the ultimate warning. Inside, the hunter can always become the hunted. But Watkins' case is different. Which brings us back to Ian Watkins' final moments. This wasn't his first brush with violence inside. Just the year before, in 2023, he'd been stabbed over something as mundane as a dispute about guitar lessons. That attack left him with neck injuries, but he survived.
So this is Ian Watkins. I mean, was Ian Watkins. He used to be the singer for this emo band, Lost Prophets, and he went to prison for a bunch of crazy charges involving literal infants. Back in 2023, he was literally grabbed by some inmates, drug into a cell that wasn't his, locked in there with him, and they beat and stabbed him for 6 hours until they had to have a special team come and extract everybody from that cell, and he barely survived.
The jugular strike was precise, a killer's move. Wakefield's reputation as Monster Mansion isn't just a nickname. It's a reflection of the concentrated evil and the violent justice that thrives within its walls. The attacker's motivation likely stems from the same place as Maudsley's, a personal history with abuse, a need for retribution. And the system itself failed. A chief inspector's report published just weeks before Watkins' death found violence at Wakefield had increased markedly, with older sex offenders feeling increasingly unsafe among a growing population of younger, more violent inmates. The execution was just the brutal, logical endpoint of that environment. But the physical violence is almost a relief compared to the psychological sentence. For these men, every minute is spent in a state of hypervigilance. Your ears are constantly tuned for the sound of footsteps stopping at your door. Your eyes are always scanning for a sudden movement, This isn't living, it's surviving in 5-second intervals. Even in protective custody, the sensory deprivation takes its toll. The lack of human touch, the inability to form any real connection, it systematically dismantles who you are until only the crime remains. The cage might be made of concrete and steel, but the real bars are the ones that form in your mind. Long after the sentence is served, if you make it out, those bars remain. The institutionalization is complete. You become a number, a case file, a monster in a story. The slow dissolution of sanity is the real punishment, a form of psychological warfare that never truly ends. So what's the truth? Prison's internal justice is brutal, but it's predictable. It follows a set of unwritten rules that are often more strictly enforced than the official ones. The punishment for these crimes extends far beyond the sentence handed down by a judge. It becomes a life of looking over your shoulder, of paying for protection, of isolation that fractures your mind. It's a cycle of violence breeding more violence, of trauma creating new trauma. The system within the system operates with a cold, ruthless efficiency. It doesn't care about appeals or rehabilitation. It only recognizes the crime and delivers its own form of retribution. And for the men at the bottom of the hierarchy, that reality is the only one that matters from the moment the cell door slams shut behind them.